People from the Horn of Africa have a unique look compared to many other populations in Africa. Whether they're Somalis, Habesha, or Oromo, they have a distinct look that lets you know that they are from the Horn region of Africa. And because of this, many people make the assumption that these people are a mixed people, which would explain their looks. I've heard people say Somalis are part Arab or Habesha are part Levantine. I've heard someone even say that Horn Africans aren't quote unquote black because they are Afro-Asiatic. They speak Afro-Asiatic languages. Sometimes Horn Africans will have features that many people might consider Eurocentric, like narrower noses, lighter skin, and looser hair texture. But does this mean that they aren't African? What is the truth about their genetics? Are Horn Africans mixed? And if they are, how mixed are they? Today we will answer those questions. The Horn of Africa contains the countries of Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti. These countries have a very long history when it comes to migration and genetics. There are many ethnic groups across these countries. Habesha people are defined as people historically from the highland region of Ethiopia and Eritrea. They speak Semitic languages and are predominantly Oriental Orthodox Christians. Habesha ethnic groups include Amhara, Tigray, Harari, etc. Many people think that the term Habesha is a synonym for Ethiopian or Eritrean, but that is not true. If you've ever lived in the West like me, you have probably heard people refer to any Ethiopian as Habesha, but really Habesha historically has meant the Semitic-speaking people from Ethiopia or Eritrea, so more central and northern Ethiopia and the country of Eritrea. Oromos are another large ethnic group in Ethiopia, the largest in fact, at around 36% of the population. They are Cushitic speakers just like their neighbors, the Somalis. Somali people are actually from many different countries. Somali people are native to eastern Ethiopia in the Somali state, the country of Somalia and Somaliland, Djibouti, and Kenya. In Somalia, Somaliland, and in Djibouti, they are the majority of the population. In Kenya and Ethiopia, they are a minority but still have quite large populations. Outside of speakers of Cushitic and Semitic languages, there are smaller ethnic groups like the many Omotic speakers in southwestern and western Ethiopia who have less of that, perceived mixed phenotype, and other groups of Nilo-Saharan speakers in western or southwestern Ethiopia as well. All of these groups I have grouped and categorized based on language. They all speak Afro-Asiatic languages besides the small Nilo-Saharan population. They speak Afro-Asiatic languages of different branches: Semitic, Cushitic, and Omotic. These represent the people of the Horn, and many times these cultural linguistic borders do have an impact on genetics and phenotype, because these ethnic borders do impact the communities that people mix within. Stereotypically, Semitic-speaking Habeshas have lighter skin. Omotic groups have darker skin and a phenotype more akin to other sub-Saharan African groups, whereas Cushitic people like Somalis and Oromos have something more in the middle with brown to dark skin, but many features that are seen as West Eurasian based. Of course, there are many exceptions to this rule, but what do the genetics of Horn Africans actually say though? Why do they look the way they do, and what migrations caused this? To understand the DNA of Horn Africans, I will be looking at prehistoric DNA. Many Horn African groups carry high West Eurasian DNA, meaning DNA that came from the western half of Eurasia, and for Horn Africans, more specifically the Middle East. Habesha people, on average, trace more than half of their DNA from Levantine Natufian hunter-gatherers, as well as some North African DNA from farmer populations. They also have some Levantine farmer DNA, which would have been a mix of Natufian DNA and Anatolian Neolithic farmer DNA, which originated in what is now modern-day Turkey. This component most likely came from later migrations that brought the Semitic languages to the Horn of Africa. The rest of their DNA is predominantly Proto-Nilotic, with some minor non-Nilotic Omotic related DNA as well. Basically, the Natufians migrated down from the Middle East and mixed with these Proto-Nilotic groups. which created a population referred to as the Cushites later on. And then these Cushites in the northern horn mixed with Middle Eastern groups that brought the Semitic languages to the region, creating the ancestors of the Habesha people. It is important to realize that even in Habesha groups, there will be genetic variance. Same with Somali groups, the more north you go, the higher the West Eurasian DNA is. Somali DNA is also characterized by Cushitic ancestry, which, as I explained, was created from the mixture of Nilotic groups mixing with Natufians. Somali are usually actually around 50 to 60% Nilotic, with the rest of their DNA being West Eurasian, mostly from Natufians. They don't have this later Levantine farmer DNA that Habesha people have, and they also don't speak Semitic languages that those people brought. Somali people also have a small North African Neolithic farmer component related to Ibero-Mauritians. Ibero-Mauritians were a mix of ancient North Africans and a Caucasus hunter-gatherer related group. Somali DNA is very Cushitic. Another Cushitic ethnic group, the Oromos, have a very similar genetic breakdown. Around 45 to 50% of their DNA is Nilotic, 10% of their DNA is related to Omotic hunter-gatherers, 35% is Natufian, and a small percentage of Ibero-Mauritian DNA as well, and also another small percentage of Levantine Neolithic farmer DNA. Omotic groups have much higher sub-Saharan DNA, and even have their own branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family with the Omotic branch, which shows their historical distance from other Horners. Omotic people have much lower West Eurasian DNA at around 20% from Natufians. Majority of their DNA comes from Omotic hunter-gatherers native to East Africa at around 55%, with around 25% coming from Nilotic pastoralists. Genetically, the Horn is very mixed. There are dozens of ethnic groups and genetic admixture that has happened over thousands of years. If an Ethiopian does a DNA test from 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, it could easily come back as 100% African. And that's because these DNA tests do not go back far enough to look at these ancient migrations. From ancient migrations that had a large impact on how these people look today and their culture today. So, are Horn Africans mixed? Yes, but not in the way many people would casually assume. The genetic makeup of people from the Horn of Africa is the result of ancient complex migrations and mixtures that goes back thousands of years, long before the Arab slave trade or modern nation states. The Cushitic and Semitic speakers of the Horn carry deep ancestral ties to both indigenous East African hunter-gatherers and ancient populations from the Middle East like the Natufians. And while there are clear patterns based on language, groups, and regions, there's still a lot of individual variation that defies stereotypes. So next time somebody says Somalis are part Arab or Habeshas aren't really black, you'll know there's much more to the story, rooted in history, language, and ancient DNA, not surface level assumptions. These people of the Horn aren't outliers, they're living evidence of Africa's deep connection to the rest of the world, and a reminder of how migration, culture, and language shapes identity over millennia. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you learned something new.